Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about racial reworks in Total War Warhammer 3, and to talk about the races that do need a rework in the game, as well as the races that don't. So over here, we're going to go from the boring tier. Now, boring tier is going to be races that work perfectly fine, don't really need any major changes, but because of any number of reasons, they just don't work well in the meta and trivialize the game. Like, that's certainly a problem certain races do have. It's not just about power, it's basically playing the end button simulator where after maybe turn 1 or on turn 1 you've effectively won your campaign, there's nothing to challenge you. And that is a problem certain races do have, two in particular over there. But anyway, beyond that, completely rework means the entire race lords, legendary lords do need a rework. Race rework just means the race needs a rework, though obviously we could reasonably put every race in a complete rework. Like, perfect, like, I'm a very critical person, so I think I would be tempted to not add any race in the perfect tier, though maybe one or two can qualify. And things like minor changes, roster issues, campaign reworks, like, pretty self-explanatory. Campaigns means that while the race may have issues, the bigger problem is, like, you do need those legendary lore changes to make things more interesting. And it's not just like one or two legendary lords for a race that would qualify for that. It would be like a lot of legendary lords for that particular race that need it. So let's start with Daniel, the Demon Prince. Demon Prince, Undivided Demons of Chaos, is a pathetic race. Daniel is genuinely the worst legendary lord by far, to the point that in many tier lists I would not even include Daniel. And I think, like, Creative Assembly doesn't care at all about him. If they did, they would have made Be'lakor Undivided Demon of Chaos, because that's pretty much what Be'lakor is in the lore, by the way. He's not a Warriors of Chaos leader. Archaon is the main one. The fact that they made Be'lakor an undivided leader, yeah, just shows how much C8 cares about Daniel. I mean, I guess the logic for them was like, well, we just reworked Warriors of Chaos. We're not going to spend the money to rework fricking Daniel. So, yeah, let's just put Be'lakor as a good race. Wood Elves, boring tier. Wood Elves work very well. They have good campaigns. They have diversity of campaigns. They have good objectives. They have a great roster, and a varied roster. Infantry, monsters, ranged units. They lack artillery. That's the only downside. But, like, everything else, yeah, they work. They work exceptionally well. It's just, yeah, the intern button simulator over there for Wood Elves. Basically, in Wood Elf campaigns, you're very rarely at risk. Your settlements are very defensible. You're probably, like, if you lose a Wood Elf campaign, I think you have to try very hard. In general, I would say losing a campaign can be difficult if you have any clue what you're doing, but, like, Wood Elves are really that kind of tier. Like, yeah, they end up being pretty boring in that respect. Dark Elves. I would say Dark Elves as a race work very well, but their campaigns are lackluster. They're very boring, even though they have diversity of geography. Like basically, the only campaign that's interesting is Marafi. The other ones, yeah, far less so. It's not that they're weak. Like, anyone who says Malice Darkblade or Hellebron is weak, like, yeah, I'm sorry. Play the game. Like, that's all I'm going to say. They're incredibly powerful, but I think their campaigns do need to become more interesting, as opposed to rush for Ulthuan to defeat the High Elves, and that's the objective in every campaign in the end. And effectively just means, like, some are better than others, and Marafi's queen of them all, more or less. Dwarves. Now, dwarves are very close to a perfect tier, but I'm not going to put them there. The reason is, I think, like, the dwarves as a race work very well right now. Great unit variety, great economy, great choices, great research tree, great mechanics all around. And effectively, they have their complete unit roster at this particular point, minus things like shard dragons, which, yeah, you know what? I think, like, giving dwarves one monster, I don't think that would fit, really. Like, I'm going to say it, like, I understand the desire for it, but I just don't think it would fit with the dwarves right now. But that's just me. So I think, like, I'm just going to put dwarves in minor changes. The reason is just two campaigns specifically. Like, all campaigns could always be improved. Like, I would certainly appreciate if Grumbrindle had different campaign mechanics, maybe take a page or 2 or 10 from Oxyatl with his missions, but outside of that, outside of that, like, the only issues are Belagar and Forek, like, not worth playing as campaigns. Worth confederating, absolutely, but playing them, not really interesting. Lots of issues there. So I think, like, there's some improvements, especially with climate situation for Forek. Like, I think the way climate suitability works, like, I think people have made the suggestion, like, if we confederate a legendary lord that has X climate, we should get that climate suitability. I think that would be a really good idea from my perspective. So I'd say dwarfs just barely avoid being imperfect and just go in minor changes because, yeah, those two campaigns need improvement. But Ungrim, Forgrim, Malachi, holy shit, Malachi and Grumbrindle, even if CA doesn't change anything at all about the dwarves, they're in a very good spot. But yeah, I do think some changes need to be made. Chaos dwarves. Well, this is an interesting one. So I think anyone who tells you the Chaos dwarves need any improvement, they don't. Like, the way the race works right now, they have varied campaigns. I think Zaytan's campaign could have a better start because, yeah, starting with tier 1 settlement. But, like, outside of, like, minor issues in early game, limited unit capacity, all that, Chaos Dwarves are in a perfect spot. Very thematic. CA knocked it out of the park. I would just say, like, the only thing I would say is, like, give Zaytan a tier 2 starting settlement. Maybe change a couple of things about his starting situation. And then just give extra unit capacity, like having 4 Chaos Dwarf Warriors, for instance, would make more variety in the early game. And we wouldn't just be using Hobgoblins for 30 turns, and a couple very few other units that we can get. So I would just increase some unit capacity, change a few things for Zaytan, but even if they don't, like, yeah, Chaos Dwarves are pretty damn perfect. Like, I think, like, regular Dwarves need more with Forik and with Belagar. So yeah, I think Chaos Dwarves are as perfect as you're going to get right now. Greenskins. Ooh, this one's going to be interesting. So Greenskins are in an amazing spot right now. But I would, like, from a race standpoint, purely race standpoint, I would say they're perfect. Like, Grimgor is genuinely one of the best Legendary Lords in the game. Azag works pretty well, but I think, like, they do qualify in minor changes. I would say they're above the Dwarves in that perspective. The problem is, while Grimgor is amazing, Azag's pretty good as well. Grom has issues with climate and his isolated positions. Skarsnik is pathetic. Wurzag is not interesting. Like, I think, like, there's just some changes that those Legendary Lords do need to make. But, like, certainly not qualifying for a campaign rework, even though I would certainly agree that, like, a lot of their campaigns do need a rework, but, like, I don't think Greenskin need the same level of effort as Dark Elves, nor near as much roster-wise. They're pretty damn complete. Could always use more stuff. Empire, interesting stuff. So Empire does certainly need reworks for Volkmar and Marcus, but that's, like, similar with the Dwarves. But I would say, like, the Empire needs more changes than Dwarves because they do have roster issues, melee infantry issues specifically, right? So you might say, well, you know, melee infantry is not necessarily important, but consider this: Dwarves have good melee infantry and a lot of range power. The Empire has a lot of range power and fast movers, though Dwarves also have gyrocopters, so don't underestimate the power of that. Like, I would take gyrocopters any day over freaking Outriders, and as much as I love Outriders right now. So I do think, like, the Empire does need some roster changes, 2 campaign fixes, but, like, yeah, I'd say just melee roster. So if we do get the DLC focused on Ulrich, which might end up being the case, so either Valten, Toddy, whatever, that would fix a lot of things and the Empire would be in a perfect spot. But yeah, right now it's just, like, some roster things. Slaanesh, complete freaking rework. Like, vassalization is such a boring fucking mechanic, and you trivialize the campaign once you vassalize Wolf 1, and early on it's so very painful. It's a fun campaign, don't get me wrong, to play for, like, 20 turns, but the replayability is not there. Slaanesh just needs pretty much everything. Lord reworks, vassalization changes, roster additions less so, but casualty replenishment abso-freaking-lutely. That would it. Research changes as well. Like, Slaaneshi research is so freaking pointless. So yeah, Slaanesh, I do like it. Like, I think it's before Thrones of Decay was the best demonic faction, but, like, yeah, they do need some changes. Not as much as like, I'm gonna put, like, Daniel obviously needs more changes than there, so I'm gonna put Slaanesh behind there in terms of how much they need reworks. Norska. Yeah, it's not quite as above Daniel, but yeah, Norska needs everything. Like, race reworks, economy reworks, hero changes, roster changes, campaign changes, like, across the board. Great Book of Grudges put Norska as the race needing reworks the most. I disagree with him on that. I would have put, like, he put Ogres number 5, but I think he did that because we know an Ogre DLC is coming in. But still, I think, like, Ogres do need it far more. Skaven, where would I put Skaven? Like, very, very minor changes, and as close to perfect as you're going to get without perfect. Like, I guess the thing is, if CA changes absolutely nothing about the Skaven, would that be fine? Yes. So, like, their legendary lords could certainly use some changes. Skaven Blight could use some changes, but I think they, if I put Chaos Dwarves in perfect, because I think like the stuff they need is not as consequential, I'm gonna put Skaven in perfect. Like, I do think they do certainly need some changes in terms of like campaign starts, Fraud's certainly, Ica Claw certainly, but like, yeah, it's not real. Like, the complaints are, even for those campaigns, like, it's only 2 campaigns that could use that. Scroll works far better, Queek works quite well, Tretch surprisingly works quite well. So yeah, Skaven, like, we're gonna get Tankful, so it's like, hopefully that has improved some things. Skaven do have some weaknesses, but that's fine. Having a race that has weaknesses, like specifically for Skaven, it's that they don't get, the way they gain money, it requires them to hold provinces with like free settlements. But still, you can't complain about Skaven. Like, they're very thematic, they're very well done. Like, this is the race CA put all the freaking effort in Warhammer 2, and it does show. Khorne, everything. The least out of the factions, but like, Khorne is in a very gimmicky situation. I think like race rework would make sense, right? Because I think Scarbrand's mechanics work well. It's just the race in general that holds him back. Like the mechanics of the race are just very gimmicky. They're very boring. Replayability is in there. Khorne is powerful. Don't get me wrong. Like, a lot of people misunderstand my position. I think Khorne is powerful, but you're lacking the kind of flexibility that you have in other races. So I think Khorne is powerful, but he's not as powerful as some other races. I'm just sick and tired of the gimmicky stuff. I'm just going to explain something with regards to my perspective on Khorne. I was very disappointed with Khorne. Like, I really liked Tarx's campaign in Warhammer 2. So let me just say that Scarbrand for me was far lesser of a campaign than Tarx was there. Maybe ROC ruined my perception of there, but honestly, I've had that opinion. Kislev, yeah, complete freaking race rework. No, even Legendary Lord rework. Because, like, not quite as much as Nakari, but yeah, Kislev's economy is pathetic. The supporter system is crap for all campaigns. The Stankest campaign's mechanics are crap. Like, yeah, Kislev needs everything. Better economy, better systems. Doesn't need roster changes necessarily. The roster is pretty good, though I would certainly like a tier 2 artillery option. And just being able to get more Frost Maidens quickly in a campaign. But it's not the roster issues, it's literally everything, right? The campaign, everything else, like the race and the campaigns and the mechanics of those campaigns that need to change. High Elves, race rework. We can talk about Techless. Yes, Techless does absolutely need a rework, but the other Legendary Lords, they're very unique, they play very well, their campaign system works, like Influence is crap, but with the High Elves, it's really a question about the systems of the race that hold them back, as opposed to the campaigns. Like, campaigns for the High Elves, very unique, very interesting, you do have a lot of replayability there, it's just like hero capacity issues, economy issues, unit recruitment issues, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's boring to just constantly recruit spearmen and archers, right? And it's the best thing you can do. So I think, like, High Elves could be more interesting. Very powerful race, don't get me wrong on that, but yeah, could certainly use a racial rework. Vampire counts, I'll be honest, like, I know people will disagree with me on this, but I think, like, the vampire counts only need, like, campaign reworks. Like, the way the race works is very good. Like, yeah, they could use more units. If they ever get their DLC, they're gonna get more units. But it's more so, can we make Manfred and Gorse more interesting? Vlad, Isabella, and Kemmler, they work perfectly well. No problems there. Like, I get that people would want more stuff for that, but, like, you can't complain about vampires not working well. They do. Like, it's kind of ridiculous from my perspective to say, like, vampire counts need a rework. They do need more variety. They do need some better systems in some ways, but I'd say the biggest priority is, like, yeah, fixing those campaigns. And even then, like, I would just argue, like, vampire counts could use more minor changes, but I think, like, the changes that we could really use from Gorst's perspective to make him less boring as dirt, and the changes that, like, even making Vlad and Isabel, like, just making the campaigns more unique, the various playstyles work better. Manfred's freaking book, so Nagash, yeah, that would be good. Tomb Kings, complete freaking rework. I would say Tomb Kings are better than Kislev, because at least Tomb Kings can work in the long term, but just like so many frustrations in terms of the campaigns. Such a crappy campaign for Kateb. Khalida is not necessarily better. Cetra has a miserable early game. So yeah, Tomb Kings need everything. Not quite as much as Kislev, Sanish, Norska, or Daniel, but they absolutely need absolutely everything changed to make them more interesting. Lizardmen. Yeah, Lizardmen, they need it more than Kislev and Tomb Kings. Like, Lizardmen they do have a great campaign with Axiatel, but that's about it. Like, the jungle handles crap. The Legendary Lords on Mazamundi is pathetic. Could be made so much more interesting. So they do need, not necessarily roster things, but they do need, like, campaign reworks. They need racial reworks. Like, the only campaign that's worth a damn is Axiatel. The others pretty damn boring. Like, Tenowin, I think Tenowin would work quite well if the fact that his campaign mechanics didn't literally break the game. Because the problem with the Skaven War he starts is that it literally breaks the AI behavior in the game. So that is certainly an issue if one of your key systems does that. So yeah, they do need that. Warriors of Chaos, similar to Wood Elves. I'd say Wood Elves are in a worse position because at least Warriors of Chaos are going out there and conquering territory. Wood Elves can just sit on their ass and do nothing. So it's not quite the end-turn button simulator. However, you're going to win every battle with ease. In fact, with Warriors of Chaos, outside of like a couple of battles and mainly quest battles, maybe one or two opponents, you can actually out-resolve your way for an entire campaign on Legendary Vanilla. I've done it many times in point of fact. Freaking joke. Like, yeah, great rework, great variety of campaigns, but just really boring. Siege. Oh yeah, complete everything. Not as much as the others, but yeah, just complete system rework. Kairos is pathetic. Changeling's boring as dirt, so yeah, Siege needs everything. Yeah, there's a lot of races that do need that. That do need a complete rework. So, but there's still certainly races that are in a good spot, or their lords are in a good spot. Cafe, I would say like they need not necessarily quite as much, actually, like a full race rework. My issue with Cafe is how boring their campaigns are in the early game and how much they steamroll after that. But I would say, like, yeah, they need a race rework more than anything. To be fair, if they didn't change anything about Cafe, would they be in a fine spot? Yeah, they would be playable and good, but dull. So I think, like, they do qualify for needing a race rework. Just kind of barely, but still. Beastmen. Oh, Beastmen. Yeah, everything. Like, except for Tarax, the campaigns aren't interesting enough. The early game is miserable even for Tarax. I think Beastmen worked very well when they were interested in Warhammer 2, but they're just kind of the race that needs an update for Warhammer 3 to make them interesting. Like, that would be my perspective. So yeah, I would say like they need a complete system rework right now. Or not necessarily in rework. I think like the way they work is fine. Just need a systems update for Warhammer 3. Like, just because I put the race in complete rework doesn't mean they necessarily need to be, rebuilt from the ground up. I don't think that for the Beastmen. Hell, I don't even think that for Kislev. It's more so just making the systems work better in Warhammer 3. Vampire Coast, yeah, they need a complete freaking rework, like everything. Although, do the Legendary Lords themselves need a rework? That's the question. Or is it the question of the race? Yeah, I think like Vampire Coast, the Lords themselves are unique enough and interesting enough that they don't necessarily need those changes, though we could always use them. It's more so the race is in a pretty awful spot. So I think like Vampire Coast just avoids that complete rework. Like, when I'm thinking about these guys and complete rework, they need absolutely significant changes. I think for Vampire Coast, like, the Legendary Lords are fairly interesting, unique. It's just the race is freaking crap. That's the problem. Ogres, oh boy. Yeah, Ogres need a complete overhaul. Like, Legendary Lords don't feel interesting. Race feels crap. Roster issues, you name it. Everything that you could think of, Ogres need it. So yeah, they're at the highest possible level over there. Nurgle. I think, like, Nurgle does need some minor changes. Like, I think the campaigns do play differently. I think vassal system should be changed, and some building changes, construction time, and all that. But, like, and climate situations. But, like, those are just minor changes. The campaigns do certainly play differently. Though I think, like, Epidemius' campaign mechanic is lackluster as hell. But Kugaf and Tamarkan, yeah, they play pretty well. It's just more so the climate situation that really screws them over. But that's a minor thing if I've ever heard one. So that's kind of it. Bretonia. That leaves Bretonia. So I think, like, Bretonia... I honestly, like, I'm kind of... I don't know where to say it. Like, I think, like, Bretonia... Their research tree is a mess, but they do have one of the strongest economies, strongest growth. Like, I think, yeah, Bretonia kind of needs a complete rework. Infantry additions, changes to vows, changes to campaigns. Changes to Confederation Researcher, yeah, I think Britannia needs it, but far less than others from my perspective. And so that's kind of where we land. I know there's a lot of people that will complain about this, but yeah, these are the races that need a complete rework. The races that just need a racial rework, not necessarily a Lord rework, and then races that just need a campaign rework more so than anything else. And yeah, Empire just needs a roster addition. That's where I stand. Let me know what you guys think about it. What would you change on this list? But this is where I personally stand at the moment. It is a bit silly, I know, as a list because there's a lot of things there. But yeah, lots of races do need it. Interesting point. So we get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 races that need a rework. We're gonna get at least 12 racial reworks going forward, though it may not be these races. Like, I would expect more of High Elf stuff and Cafe and stuff than I would expect anything for freaking Norska, for instance. Or even Lizardman. Lizardman might be left in this. We don't know if CA will do anything for Britannia, though. If they're doing anything for Britannia, will be alongside the paid DLC. So Britannia is going to be the free stuff and released alongside the paid DLC. I don't expect anything for freaking Daniel, though. So, like, forget fucking Daniel. Like, I don't think it's even worth putting the effort in right now. So, that would be all. Again, let me know what you guys think. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.